Here begins the videotape deposition of Jeff Villella, taken in the matter of case number 2015-CA010254-0. Zonia Book versus Walt Disney Parks and Resorts USA, to be heard in the Circuit Court of the 9th Judicial Circuit in and for Orange County, Florida. This deposition is being held at 125 East Mark Street, Orlando, Florida, 32803. Today's date is February 1st, 2018, and the time on the video monitor is 10:07 a.m. The court reporter is Sarah Miller, and the video specialist is Benjamin Jaffe on behalf of Orange Legal. Would counsel and all present please introduce yourself? Afterwards, the court reporter will swear in the witness.
Okay, Jerry Gurley, on behalf of the plaintiff. Plaintiff, introduce yourself.
Sonia Book. Mary Reith Houston for the defendants of the firm Schutz and Bowen.
Jeff Villella.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Good morning, sir. Hi. My name is Jerry Gurley, and I have the pleasure of representing the plaintiff, Zonia Book. You're here today because your name's come up a couple times during previous depositions as being someone who has first-hand knowledge about issues raised in this lawsuit. Were you aware of that? Of the reason why you're called here today?
I'm going to object to the question to the extent it could call for communications with legal counsel.
Mm-hmm.
You can answer if you can answer with that reference to communications with legal counsel.
Okay, so let's kind of set some ground rules here. One, from time to time, your counsel will raise an objection. She's doing it for the record. Unless she tells you not to answer, you still have to answer after she stated her objection, because that's for the court to sort out in terms of the questions, the objections that she's raising. This is not a got you session. You are truly here because your name has come up a couple of times, and I just want to know, I don't want to know anything that you talked about with your lawyer, but my simple question is were you aware that you were being deposed today because you have been named as a witness in previous depositions? That's my specific question.
Same
Yes.
objection and instruction.
Okay. And how long have you been aware of the fact that you've been named as a witness in this case, sir?
Since I was called to testify.
Okay, sir. When did you first become aware that you were being called to testify?
When I received the subpoena for deposition.
And when was that? And
I'll have to refer to the deposition.
okay,
that
let
I
me just tell you
received.
something. If you're going to refer to anything in your folder today, then I want to see
Yeah,
it.
and I would
Before you-
suggest, let's just
okay.
put that away, Jeff.
Okay.
You don't need
All right.
anything to refer to.
My attorney notified me that I was going to be called in this case.
Okay, and I'm just trying to get an idea of when that was.
I don't recall the exact date.
Now, you were actually noticed for a deposition back in November, correct?
Correct.
And then you had a medical situation come up, is that correct?
That's correct.
What was that medical situation exactly?
I'm going to object to the extent that calls for personal information. Are you asking him for medical information?
Yes, I'm asking for the information and related to why you were not able to make your deposition.
I believe that was detailed in the affidavit that was filed
I'm-
regarding
Hold on, sir.
surgery that I had that I was unable to attend.
So did you have surgery on the day that you were scheduled to attend the deposition in November?
Can you tell me what the date was that I was supposed to testify?
Yes, I can. We'll come back to that. When did you have surgery? Let's just go that route.
I believe it was the 18th of... It was in the affidavit that was filed.
Yeah, and I'm just asking for your independent recollection of when you had surgery.
My best recollection was the 18th of December.
Okay. And what was the last day that you worked prior to having that surgery?
I would have to refer to calendar or notes. I don't know off
Okay.
the top of my head.
Was there a period of time prior to your surgery that you were bedridden?
There was a period of time that I didn't go to work as a result of needing surgery.
I understand. And how, just roughly, how long were you out prior to going to surgery?
I don't know the exact number of days.
Was it a week or more?
There was at least 5 days of sick days taken in conjunction, or 5 days out of work as a result of the surgery.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask you some questions that I ask all witnesses, just some background information. As counsel has intimated, and you've raised the concern about the fact that you can't sit very long. Is that correct? You can't sit very long because of your back condition?
That's correct.
All right. So what I would simply ask you to do is, as we go through this process, we're going to try to get this done as quickly as possible. But if you need to take a break, just let me know,
Okay,
and we'll take a break.
great.
The only exception to that is if we're in the middle of a question, we're going to have to finish
I understand.
the question first, and then we'll take a break at the next convenient moment.
Appreciate that.
All right? So you know where the restroom is, and you have water, and we'll try to make this as comfortable as possible. But okay. So here are the background questions. Madam Court Reporter, I'm going to ask you not to include this this part about his date of birth in the record.
Would you like me to go off the video record?
Yes, I would like for you to go off the record for a moment.
We are going off the video record. The time is now 10:13 a.m.
Oh, wait.
We are back on the video record. The time is now 10:14 a.m.
So where did you grow up?
I resided in Kenosha, Wisconsin for a period of time, and then have been in Orlando, Florida since about 1968.
Okay, so did you go to high school in Orlando, Florida?
Yes, I did.
What high school did you attend?
Oak Ridge High School.
Did you graduate from Oak Ridge?
Yes, I did.
What year did you graduate?
1974.
Did you attend college after high school?
Yes, I did.
What college did you attend?
Rollins College.
When did you attend Rollins College?
I attended Rollins College through my 20s on a part-time basis as I was employed full-time. And
Okay. Do you recall the year that you started Rollins College? Sir?
Not the exact year now.
Did
I
you
graduated
Go ahead.
from Rollins when I was 29 or 30 years old with my undergrad in criminal justice.
And did you undertake any additional college courses after obtaining your bachelor's degree, sir?
Yes.
When did you do that?
It was approximately 1992. I started a 3.5-year program at night with Rollins College for my MBA.
Did you obtain the MBA?
Yes, I did.
When did you obtain the MBA?
3.5 years after I started in 92, so.
So that would have been 95?
95, 96 time frame.
Okay. Sir, have you ever been arrested?
No.
Have you ever been a party to a lawsuit?
Yes.
Okay. Have you been a party to more than one lawsuit?
I don't believe so.
Okay, let's talk about the one that you said yes to. Were you the defendant or the plaintiff?
I was named along with the town of Windermere, who was sued.
Okay. When was that?
Not sure the exact date, but it was in the 1986, 87 timeframe.
And what were the allegations made by the plaintiff against you? You said you were named as
me.
Yes, sir. You were named as a defendant in a lawsuit, right?
I'm not clear. The town was sued, and I was a party in the lawsuit.
So if you were a party, you were either the plaintiff or the defendant. So you weren't the one who was suing, right?
Correct.
So you were the below the V along with the town of Windermere, correct?
Yes, I was the chief of police, so I was responsible for the police department and the.
So what did the person allege against the town of Windermere?
Wrongful termination.
And who was that exactly?
Who was the plaintiff?
Who was the plaintiff? Yes, and I apologize for not being clear about that, but yes.
Richard Lockman.
Was he in fact terminated by the chief of police, which would be you?
Yes.
And what was the basis for his termination?
There were several incidents brought to the town council that was considered by the town council.
So did you have the authority to fire him, or did the town council fire him?
Objective form. You can answer.
You understand the question, sir? Let me rephrase the question. Did you make the decision to terminate Mr. Richard Lockman, or did the town council make that decision?
The town council.
Did you recommend his termination to the town council?
I don't specifically recollect. The information was presented to the town council and the decision was made.
Okay. What, to the best of your recollection, what information was presented to the town council?
Objective form. You can answer.
Involved investigations conducted by the officer outside of the city jurisdiction, which placed the town at risk.
And what did Mr. Lockman say was the basis of the wrongful termination,
Objective form.
if you recall?
Objective form. You can answer.
I don't recall specifically.
Did
That
he-
was more than 30 years ago.
Did he allege that he was being discriminated against?
I don't recall.
Excuse me, sir. You leaned into the frame.
I leaned into. Okay. So how did that lawsuit resolve?
It went to trial after I had left the town.
Mm-hmm.
And best of my recollection, I was given a summary judgment that I was not responsible or liable or culpable or whatever the legal word would be, but I was released.
Mm-hmm. Do you know whether or not the town was found liable?
No,
You don't know, or they were not?
I don't know. You
Well-
asked me if I knew.
Is it true that Mr. Richard Lockman actually got his job back with the town?
I believe that was the case.
And that was after the trial, right?
I would assume so.
Do you know whether or not he received any compensation from Windermere as a result of that lawsuit?
No, I don't.
Okay. So that's the only lawsuit that you've ever been involved in?
To the best of my knowledge.
And let me just tell you that let me give you the definition of what I consider to be a lawsuit. Bankruptcy, divorce. So have you ever been divorced?
Yes.
And when was that?
It was 7.5 years ago.
And where did that lawsuit or that divorce take place? What court?
Orange County, Florida.
And can you give me the full name of your former wife?
Susan Jean Villella.
Jean is spelled Jan, Jean, or Gene? What was her maiden name, sir?
Perusits.
Can you spell that?
Perusits.
And is she also from Orlando?
She was at the time, yes.
Does she still live in Orlando? Do you know?
No, she doesn't.
Where does she live?
New Smyrna Beach, I believe.
Thank you, sir. So have you ever filed bankruptcy?
No.
Have you ever been the subject of any employee complaints in which an employee has accused you of harassing him or her?
Not to my knowledge.
Have you ever been accused by a subordinate or a coworker of discrimination?
No.
All right. One second. Have you ever had your deposition taken?
Yes.
How many times?
I don't recall.
Have you had your deposition taken since you've been employed with Walt Disney?
I don't believe so.
Have you ever served in the military?
No, I haven't.
All right, so let's back up in time. You graduated from high school in 75, did you say?
No.
Okay, correct me, I'm sorry. What year did you graduate from high school?
1974.
74, okay. And then what did you do immediately after graduating from high school?
Worked different jobs. And
What was your first job?
post high school,
Yes, sir.
I worked for United Parcel Service.
And what did you do for them?
I loaded package cars.
How long did you do that? In terms of years?
Probably 2 or 3 years.
Okay. And then what did you do next, sir?
I was hired full-time at the Windermere Police Department.
Who was the chief of police at that time, sir?
I don't recall this. I don't recall.
So when you were hired full-time as a police officer, was that around 1977 or 1978?
There was a time that I worked part-time for the police department and part-time for UPS until such time that the police department offered me a full-time position with shift work precluded me from continuing working with UPS.
When did you first start working as a part-time officer for Windermere?
When I was 19,
Did you attend the police academy at 19?
yes,
Which police academy did you attend?
J.C. Stone Academy at Orlando Police Department.
And did you graduate from J.C. Stone?
Yes,
When did you graduate from J.C. Stone Police Academy?
I believe it was 1976.
So at some point you start working full-time for Windermere Police Department. Were you ever promoted?
Yes,
When did you receive your first promotion?
I don't recall how many months it was, but it was a short time.
So it was within months?
Yes,
Okay. What were you promoted to within months?
sergeant.
And do you recall at that time who the chief was that promoted you to sergeant?
Merle Thompson.
Okay, so then what was the next time that you were promoted? Strike that. Were you promoted again after
Yes.
being... And when was that?
When I was 21, I was promoted to chief of police when Merle left.
So you became the chief of police at Windermere at age 21.
That's correct.
How many officers did you have at that time when you first became chief?
It varied. There were full-time and part-time.
Let's go with the full-time staff first.
At that time, there were probably 5 full-time officers.
How many part-time?
Again, that varied, but averaged about 10 to 15 reserve officers.
How long did you serve as chief?
Until October of 1987.
When did you, what year did you first begin serving as chief?
When I was 21, I can do the math for you.
Okay, let's see, 76, that puts you at 1977. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right.
So 10 years, you served as chief for 10 years?
Yes.
And did you resign or were you asked to leave?
I resigned.
Why did you resign?
I was interested in working for Disney.
But were there any issues that had been identified by the council that they made you aware of regarding your job performance?
No.
Were there any complaints that had been filed against you that you were aware of?
Object to form, you can answer.
There may have been. I can tell you that I left in good standing.
Who was the mayor? Strike that. Did Windermere have a city manager at the time that you served as the chief?
Yes, the structure was a town manager.
Town manager. And was the town manager your direct supervisor?
Yes.
Did the town manager hire you?
Initially,
Yes, sir. Hire you to be the chief.
it would have been a town council decision.
Okay. Did the town manager have the ability to hire or to fire police
Objective,
officers?
objective form, you can answer.
I don't know specifically. The town is run by the town council, and the town manager works for the town council.
Who was the town manager at the time that you resigned as the chief of police?
To the best of my recollection, it was John Luff,
And how do you spell Luff?
Luff.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Now, you said you resigned because you wanted to go work for Disney. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you have a job with Disney at the time that you resigned?
Yes.
What job did you have?
Started as a security host full-time with Walt Disney World.
Do you recall what your rate of pay was when you started as a security host?
No, I don't.
What was your salary as chief of police in the town of Windermere?
Roughly 30,000 annually.
And you left that job when you came to Disney. Were you making $30,000 a year as a security host?
No, I wasn't.
Were you making $20,000 a year as a security host?
As indicated, I don't know the rate of pay when I initially hired, but it was less than 30.
Did you immediately start working with Disney as a security host after you left the town of Windermere?
Yes.
Do you recall who hired you at Disney?
Objective form, you can answer.
I went to casting and was interviewed by George Lopez.
Okay. Do you recall who your direct supervisor was in security once you started working there?
No, I don't.
Other than UPS and Windermere Police Department, have you worked for anyone else since high school? We know that you work for Disney, but have you had any other job that we didn't discuss so far?
Yes.
What job was that?
I worked construction for a number of different companies in conjunction with working for UPS.
What do you do in construction particularly, sir?
Skilled labor, carpentry.
Have you ever been terminated from any job?
No.
You ever resigned in lieu of termination?
No.
Ever been written up on any job for poor performance?
No.
Ever been placed on a performance improvement plan?
No.
Okay. So let's come back to Disney. What year was that you started working for Disney exactly, sir?
October 1987.
Where were you assigned when you started working in security? What area of the complex, the Disney complex, were you assigned to?
The first day or Don't understand your question.
Your first job assignment. You know,
Security
like,
host was the assignment.
there's the Magic Kingdom, there's Animal Kingdom, there's different Epcot. So I'm asking, do you recall specifically what area? And that's what I'm asking.
I worked many different areas in the 6 months that I was a security host.
You served as a security host for a period of 6 months?
Yes.
So what happened after that initial 6 months?
I was promoted to a salaried investigator position.
Who promoted you?
Objective form, you can answer.
Greg Weeks, the director of security.
Do you know a gentleman by the name of Dick Nunes?
Yes, I know him.
How do you know him?
I knew that he was the, believe, president of Walt Disney World back in the time frame that I started there.
Did he recommend you for the job in security?
Objective form, you can answer.
I don't know if he did.
Did you seek a recommendation or a referral from him?
No.
Did he live in the town of Windermere at the time that you were the chief of police?
I don't believe so.
All right, thank you, sir. So you were promoted to investigator. How long did you serve as an investigator?
I don't know exactly. It's a couple of years, I believe.
And then what happened after the couple of years?
I was promoted to assistant security supervisor.
Who promoted you? And when I say who, I mean was there a particular manager that promoted you?
Objective form, you can answer.
I don't remember specifically.
Did you have to take a test of some sort to be considered for promotion?
Not at that time, no.
You say not at that time. Is it now the practice of Disney to test before they promote to positions of supervisory positions?
Objective form, you can answer.
I don't know specifically what the current process is.
All right, so you were promoted to assistant supervisor? That was
Correct.
your specific title?
Yes.
And who was your manager at the time that you were promoted to assistant supervisor?
I believe initially it was Jack Medill, I believe. He was a full supervisor that I would have reported to.
Okay. And at some point, did you become a supervisor?
Yes.
When was that?
Again, I don't know the exact dates. It would have been a couple of years, a year or two after I was promoted to a full supervisor.
All right. And how long did you serve as a full supervisor?
Don't recall exactly, but a couple of years perhaps.
And did you get promoted again?
Yes.
What was your next position?
An area manager or full manager. It was assistant supervisor, supervisor, manager. So I was promoted to manager.
And what then was the function of an area manager?
The manager function was to have a area of responsibility that comprised assistant supervisors that worked the shifts that were responsible for the security hosts. Also, I worked as a full supervisor within investigations, which was a different role, which managed investigators.
Okay.
And they had assistant supervisors that they reported to.
But when you first became an area manager, where were you assigned?
So ask the question again.
When you first were promoted to area manager, where were you assigned?
Okay, it wasn't called area manager.
Okay, well, I thought that's the term that you used. So, what was the title?
I was security host,
Okay,
promoted to an salaried investigator, promoted to an assistant supervisor,
got that.
and then promoted to a supervisor.
All right. So when I thought we'd already established the fact that you've been a
Right.
supervisor.
And
The
then
next promotion, what was that
to
called?
manager.
All right. And when you were a manager, where were you assigned?
Was assigned multiple areas of responsibility. The practice at the time was that if you were in investigations, as I was as a salary investigator, if you were going to be an assistant supervisor, you would be moved to the security host operation so that you weren't supervising people that you were previously peers with.
Understood.
So I would move to the security operations, the security host operation, and then when I was promoted, at times I would be moved back into investigations, depending on where I was at the time that I was promoted, so that I would be promoted into an area that I had not worked to supervise people that were not directly formally my peers.
Understood. Thank you, sir. Now, again, after you became a manager, you were promoted again, right?
Yes.
And what was your next promotion?
It was called senior manager at the time.
Do you recall what year that was that you became a senior manager?
No, I don't.
And as a senior manager, how many managers directly reported to you?
It varied, if depending on geographic area of responsibility for that senior manager depended on what the organization was for that area of responsibility.
And when you say areas, because I don't work for Disney, I never have, are you talking about the different parks, like Epcot, Magic Kingdom, or are we talking about something else when you say the geographic areas?
It would be either a geographic area that had security hosts assigned, like a park, or it would be a function, like investigations, that was global.
Understood. All right. So, how long did you serve as a senior manager?
Don't recollect exactly. Would say 2 or 3 years is my estimate.
Okay. And were you promoted again after that?
Yes.
And do you recall who was the decision maker who promoted you? Or decision makers, if there were more than one?
Bud Dare is the person who told me that I was promoted to director. So Bud Dare is not in security, but he
What was Bud Dare's title?
was vice president within facilities operations services.
Did Bud Dare become your boss?
Yes.
Is he currently your boss?
No.
Does he currently work for Walt Disney, to your knowledge?
No.
Has he retired?
Yes.
Okay, so who's your boss currently?
I'm currently retired.
When did you retire?
January 31st.
And was that a planned thing, or did you just decide to retire in January?
It was planned.
Okay. Did you go out on medical retirement or just regular retirement?
Objective form, and Mr. Villella, to the extent questions ask for your medical information, you certainly have the option not to disclose that information.
Well, just want to be clear. Are you directing the witness not to answer the question?
If the witness is uncomfortable answering questions about medical condition, I'm letting him know he does not have to answer them.
If she tells you not to answer, then don't answer. If she doesn't tell you not to answer, I'm going to ask for the answer. If not, we'll certify that question to the judge.
That's fine.
So, just one more time, clear, you're directing the witness not to answer
If
the
the
question?
witness does not want to answer questions about his medical condition, he does not have to disclose that information. You can regard that as an instruction or not an instruction, but that's what I'm informing the witness. It is his choice about answering questions about medical information.
Sir, did you medically retire or were you regularly retired?
I regularly retired.
Okay. All right. And are you pursuing another job at this time?
Not at the moment.
Are you moving out of the state of Florida?
No immediate plans to do so.
Okay. And where do you live exactly now, sir?
In Orlando.
How long have you lived in Orlando, Florida?
Since 1968.
Now, were you asked to retire? Did someone ask you to retire? Meaning someone in management say, Jeff, it's time for you to retire?
No.
Were you under any kind of an investigation internally at the
No.
time? Were you told by anyone in management above you that they had some concerns about your performance?
I'm going to object to the form. Mr. Villella's performance is not at issue in this case. We have no confidentiality agreement in place. Without confidentiality agreements, I instruct him not to answer.
Just for the record, since we're doing this for the judge, I object to counsel continually making speaking objections, which counsel knows is not permitted by the rules. So she's instructed you not to answer that question. We'll move on. Sir, do you know someone by the name of Melissa Merklinger?
Yes.
How do you know Melissa Merklinger?
Through 25 years of working together at Walt Disney World.
Have you ever managed her? Have you ever served as her manager?
Yes, I have.
And is it true that until you retired recently, you were her direct manager?
Yes.
How long did you serve as her direct manager?
I don't know exactly. As I've testified, I've moved throughout my career
I understand.
purposefully from investigations to operations, as she has in her rise in her career. So we have crossed paths many times.
Okay, let's talk about the most recent time that you've crossed paths.
Okay.
How long did you serve as her manager? Or her leader? I guess that's the term that you use within Disney, as her leader.
Since I was director, she reported to me since that time directly, and may have reported to me at different times on and off before that.
You say since you were a director, when did you become the director? Let me back up. What was your title before you retired?
Vice President of Security for Segment, Walt Disney Parks and Resorts.
Okay, you used the term director just a moment ago. Did you ever have the title of Director of Security?
Did I have?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I did.
When did you hold that title?
Shortly after 9/11.
How long did you hold that title?
Approximately 10 years until I was promoted to vice president.
And who received that title or who was promoted to director after you became vice president?
Objective form, you can answer.
Sir, if any time my questions are not clear,
It's not clear.
just tell me. I'll try to rephrase it. Was someone promoted after you became the vice president? Was someone promoted to the director of the security position?
No.
So did that position just lie vacant for a while?
Yes.
And is there a director of security currently?
Yes.
Who's that?
There's more than one.
Okay. Who are those individuals?
Melissa Merklinger is a director of security, and Al Regas is a director of security.
When did Melissa Merklinger become the director of security?
I don't recall the exact year.
Did you play any role in her being elevated to that position?
Did you say she or me?
Did you play any role in her being promoted to the position of director of security?
Yes, I recommended her for that position.
And you recommended her to whom?
Jeff Volley.
Who's Jeff Volley?
Jeff Volley is a senior vice president for Facilities Operations Services.
Was he your boss?
At that time, yes.
Was he your boss when you retired?
No, he was not.
Who was your immediate supervisor or leader?
Eric Velez.
How long did Eric Velez serve as your leader?
Approximately a year and a half.
Okay, let's get back to, you don't recall specifically when you recommended Melissa Merklinger to be the director of security? Is that correct?
I don't recall the date, no.
You recall the year?
There was a time that the director position wasn't filled, and then subsequent to that it was authorized to be filled, and I recommended Melissa to Jeff Volley.
Did Melissa go through any kind of testing to get the job?
No.
Did she compete with other individuals who might have been interested in the job?
Objective form, you can answer.
Were there more than one was there applicants as opposed to just one person who was considered for that job?
I don't recall specifically.
Do you know whether or not the job was posted? The availability of the job, was it posted within the Disney HR structure so that employees who might have been interested had a chance to apply?
I don't recall.
You do recall, though, that you made a recommendation. Did you have a personal conversation with Jeff Volley?
He was my boss. I had many conversations. I don't understand them.
Okay, yeah. Did you send him an email saying, I recommend Melissa Merklinger for the job?
Probably not.
Do you know whether or not you wrote a memorandum saying, I recommend Melissa for the job?
I could have. I don't recall.
Okay. All right. Now, there was a time when she served exclusively as the only director of security, correct?
Correct.
And when you served as the director of security, you were the director of security exclusively, correct?
Yes,
There wasn't two.
that's correct.
And what was that job of director of security? Did it exist before you had the job?
Yes.
Who was the director of security prior to you?
The position was open for a period of time, as I recall.
I understand, but at some point before it was open, there was a director of security. Is that right?
Yes, there were several.
And in those several that you recall, how many times were there more than one director of security at the same time?
There was not.
Okay.
Until Al Rodriguez was promoted as the second director.
When was Al Rodriguez promoted as the second director?
the date.
Why was there a need to create a second director's position if there's only been one director of security for years, for decades? What was the reason for the change?
The change was span of control and the exponential growth within security.
But when did that happen, though? What year was Al Rodriguez promoted?
You're asking me to guess, as I indicated,
No.
I don't know the date.
Okay, was it in 2015? The year 2015.
Objection asked and answered.
You can. I'm not asking you to narrow to a date. You've said that, but now I'm asking you: can you recall whether it was within the year 2015?
Objection asked and answered. Go ahead.
I don't know the date. It has been about a year that he has been in the position,
Okay.
roughly.
All right. And what did he do prior to becoming the co-director? Is that his title, co-director of security, or just
No.
director of security?
Director of Security.
What was his job title prior to that?
He was a senior manager within security.
And did you also recommend him for the director of security position?
Yes.
And do you know whether or not he had to interview for that position and compete with others who might have been interested in the position?
Yes, he did.
But Melissa did not, as far as you can recall.
Objection to form. You can answer.
Melissa,
And asked and answered.
but to your knowledge, to your recollection, Melissa Merklingen did not compete for her director of security position. Is that correct?
Object to form. Asked and answered. Go ahead.
I believe I indicated I didn't recall.
Okay. So is it possible that she did, but you just can't recall?
That she did what?
Have to compete for her position.
Can you be more specific?
Did she have? You said you don't recall, but when I hear that statement, I'm thinking that maybe it did happen, but you just, as you sit here today, you can't specifically recall. Is that what you're saying, or
Yes.
you're saying that you're pretty sure it didn't happen?
Object to form. Go ahead.
If you
Your first.
okay, all right. Thank you, sir. Now, you said you've known Melissa for 25 years, right?
Yes.
You would consider her to be a friend, right?
Yes.
You've traveled with her personally, right?
No.
You've never gone on vacations with her?
No.
Never gone on a cruise with her and her significant other? Ever?
No.
Okay. Have you ever, does you say have you ever been a guest in Melissa Merklinger's home before?
Yes.
Have you ever had more than a business relationship with Melissa Merklinger? A romantic relationship with Melissa Merklinger?
Object to form. And I think you're getting into personal issues. You can answer that one question, but I caution you.
You can't caution me,
I'm
counsel.
cautioning you. I'm going to instruct not to answer if we get into personal issues.
I'm going to say again for the record, counsel is making speaking objections. Counsel knows the rules.
As to you.
So state the objection, whatever that is, and we'll move on. But my question is, have you ever had a romantic relationship with Melissa Merklinger?
I'm not going to answer my question.
Okay. I'm going to instruct him not to answer. It gets into personal information.
Certify. Well,
That's fine.
certify the question. Okay. So, sir, you were her manager up until the time that you retired, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
And you were made aware that at some point Miss Book made a complaint in which she alleged that she was harassed by Melissa Merklinger, right? You were made aware of that allegation was made, correct?
I'm going to object to form. You can go ahead and answer.
I was made aware of a criminal charge that was filed by Ms. Book against her.
Well, let's start with that. When were you made aware of that? Do you remember the month and the year that
No, I don't.
came to your knowledge? How did it come to your knowledge?
I don't recall specifically.
Were you told by your manager? Is that possible?
May have been by counsel.
Okay, again, I don't need to know anything that was discussed that's between you and the lawyers. Okay, I'm just trying to know when you knew. Did you ever also become aware that there was an investigation that was being conducted by Employee Relations related to an allegation of harassment that was made by Ms. Book?
Discussions with counsel.
But other than discussions with counsel, were you ever approached by anyone in Employee Relations regarding allegations that were made by Ms. Book related to Melissa Merklinger?
Can you be more specific
Yeah.
in your question? Because I think you're asking some that are
Sure, let me narrow.
conversations with counsel I'm not going to discuss.
Yeah, and I don't want you to. We've stated that up front.
Right.
But Peter McLeod, do you know that gentleman?
I do.
Is it true that he was an employee relations manager that was assigned to support the security department or division?
Object to form. You can answer.
Did Peter McLeod support, which means, well, I think you know what that means. Was he the one particular employee relations person that investigated claims of harassment and discrimination in security?
Object to form. You can answer.
I know Peter McLeod to be an investigator in employee relations that investigates cases, some of which have been in security.
Oh, okay. Do you know whether or not Peter McLeod investigated a claim in security that relates to Zonia Book making a claim of harassment against Melissa Merklinger?
I'm aware that employee relations conducted an investigation subsequent to an Orange County Sheriff's Office investigation.
All right.
And when the case was closed as unfounded with the Sheriff's Office, then it was turned over to Gina Cordero and Jim Bowden, who may have assigned Peter McLeod to be the investigator for them in their case.
Do you recall having any conversations with Peter McLeod about Ms. Book's complaints?
No.
You never met with him and with Melissa Merklinger to talk about the findings of the investigation? The employee relations?
Did not meet with Peter McLeod to do
Did
that.
you meet with anyone?
Yes.
Who did you meet with?
Gina Cordero,
And who's Gina
the
Cordero?
Vice President of Employee Relations.
Okay. And specifically, what did you discuss with Gina Cordero regarding Zonia Book's complaint of harassment?
And just again, I caution you, if counsel is present, please don't answer the question.
Counsel was present for those discussions that I had with Gina.
In that case, I instruct you not to answer.
Was there a report done by Peter McLeod?
I have no knowledge.
You've never seen a written report by Peter McLeod?
No, I haven't.
So if Peter McLeod testified under oath, sitting right there in that chair, that he had a discussion with you, is he lying?
Objective form, you can answer.
Is he?
I've from time to time have talked to Peter McLeod on several issues.
No, but I'm asking you a narrow question and I'm telling you that Peter McLeod sat right there in that chair that you're sitting in and said that he discussed this case of Melissa Merklinger allegedly harassing Zonia Book with you. Are you saying that that is absolutely not true?
Objective form, you can answer.
You're not asking, you didn't ask me specifically enough. There was another meeting with Jim Bowden in which Peter McLeod was present for an investigation that was not the Gina Cordero meeting.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that meeting with Jim Bowden and Peter McLeod.
Okay.
What was discussed in that meeting?
That meeting, the scope of that meeting was to ask Melissa Merklinger specific questions after the sheriff's office and the state attorney's office had unfounded the case. They were assigned to look into the matter, and I was present at that meeting with Melissa, Jim Bowden, and Peter, whereas they were asking Melissa Merklinger specific questions.
What questions?
Within the scope of their investigation.
All right. I didn't mean to interrupt you. What questions did they ask her?
They asked her questions specific to their investigation.
Did they ask her whether or not she'd been drinking that night, at the night of the awards banquet? Do you recall?
I believe they did.
Did she indicate that, in fact, she had been drinking?
My recollection is she indicated she had some wine with dinner.
And were you at that the 2016 Legacy Award banquet?
I was.
Did Walt Disney provide wine for the participants or the attendees at that banquet?
Yes.
Did they set a limit on how much wine each person could drink? Like 2 glasses, 3 glasses? Or was there a limit, to your knowledge?
My knowledge is that it was served at the tables with dinner.
Okay.
And servers are under mandate for responsible vendor to monitor consumption.
All right. So, did they ask her whether or not she attempted to kiss Zonia Book on the night of the Legacy award banquet? They being Peter or Mr. Bowden, Jim Bowden.
Yes.
And what was her response?
She did not.
Did they ask her whether she grabbed Miss Book during the course of the evening without her permission?
Yes.
And what was her response?
There was discussion about a hand holding in a group photograph that was holding of a hand in a photograph.
Were you aware that Peter McLeod concluded that she being Melissa Merklinger was being dishonest when she answered the question about whether or not she was attempting to kiss Zonia Book?
Objective form, go ahead.
That wasn't my understanding.
Well, what was your understanding?
There was no finding by or utterance by Peter within the investigative meeting that I attended, whereas they were interviewing Melissa specific to his feelings.
All right, subsequent to that meeting between Peter, Melissa, Jim Bowden, and yourself, and why were you there, by the way? Just curious.
As Melissa's leader, I was present for her interview, which is customary.
It is customary for a leader to be present when they're being when an employee is being interviewed or they're interviewed by employee relations?
Yes.
Does that happen all the time?
Yes.
And is it automatic, or does the employee have to request that?
No, objective form, you can go ahead.
It's an employee relations policy.
Okay.
They reach out to the area
Okay.
and they ask for a leader that would be the leader that they would interact with regard to their investigation on a subordinate.
Were you there just to monitor what was happening, or were you there to advocate on the behalf of the employee?
To monitor.
Did you take any notes from
No,
that
I did
meeting?
not.
Do you know if Peter McLeod took any notes during that meeting?
No, I don't.
Do you know whether or not Jim Bowden took any notes during that meeting?
No, I don't. They were both reviewing files. I don't know what
During the meeting?
notations. Yes.
Do you know whether or not the conversation that took place was recorded?
Not to my knowledge.
Jerry, we've been going about just over an hour now, so could you take 5, please?
Yeah, hold on though, but just hold on. Let me just make sure that we're at a good
Okay.
stopping place. Yeah.
That's fine.
So about how long did that meeting last between the four of you that that we've been discussing?
My estimate is about 45 minutes
And where did the meeting take place, sir?
in Jim Bowden's office.
And where's Jim Bowden's office located within the Disney complex?
At the time, it was not at this meeting. It was in a SunTrust building, employee relations office space that's within that building.
Okay. We can take a break.
Okay, great, thanks.
We are going off the video record. The time is now 11:13 a.m.
Take your mic.
We are back on the video record. The time is now 11:26 a.m.
Okay, sir. To your knowledge, was Melissa Merklinger given an admonishment pertaining to the allegations that were made against her by Zonia Book?
Objective form, you can answer.
Your term admonishment, I'd like to just be specific with you.
Just tell me what happened as a follow-up then. But yeah, I did use that term admonishment.
Mm-hmm. As indicated, the criminal case was determined to be unfounded by Orange County Sheriff's Office and then subsequently by the Orange County State's Attorney's Office. It was then assigned to Walt Disney World Employee Relations to investigate. It was unfounded as to the complaint with Walt Disney World Employee Relations.
Can you
But
stop?
as
I'm
part
sorry.
of that closeout of that case, there was discussion with Gina, with counsel, regarding.
Well, if this is a discussion with counsel that you had, then please don't reveal the contents of that discussion.
Okay.
Okay. My instructions regarding counsel remains the same. Not looking for that. I'm talking about the internal process. And at the end of the day, was there any kind of documentation of what occurred in a written counseling or admonishment or whatever nomenclature you want to use?
Not to my
was-
knowledge.
Okay. And you say that it was unfounded. Who specifically told you that it was unfounded?
Gina Cordero.
Did you see a written document that stated as much, that it was unfounded, the allegations were unfounded?
I did not review their documentation that they had.
So was this told to you verbally?
Yes.
Was Peter McLeod present when this was told to you?
I believe he was in that meeting, yes.
When did that meeting take place, sir?
At the closeout of their investigation when it was determined to be unfounded.
Do you recall the month and the year?
No, I don't.
Do you recall where it took place? Was that
Yes.
SunTrust building?
In Gina Cordero's office in SunTrust.
Okay.
Peter reported to Jim Bowden. Jim Bowden reported to Gina Cordero. The meeting was in Gina Cordero's office with me present with Melissa for the closeout.
Do you do the performance evaluations for Melissa Merklinger? Or did you do them?
Yes, I did.
And how often did you perform these evaluations?
Evaluations are ongoing in the Disney culture. The formal year-end closeouts are done on an annual basis.
What month are they typically done?
They're typically done in the end of the fiscal year,
Okay.
as bonus planning and merit planning is subsequent to that and is delivered before the end of a calendar year. So there's a window of time, September, October timeframe, that the annual performance review is discussed.
And were there any notations in that performance evaluation that you did that related to Ms. Book's allegations against Merklinger?
No.
Merklinger? To your knowledge, did she receive a bonus that year?
Yes.
All right. So does Disney have a sexual harassment policy?
Yes.
And does it, in that policy, offer a definition of what constitutes sexual harassment?
I don't know specifically if there's a definition within the policy.
You're familiar with the policy, though, right?
I'm familiar that there is a policy on sexual harassment with the Disney company.
And when did you first become familiar with that policy?
It's something that's expected of you when you initially hire with the company, and then it's available to you as a resource, and there's periodic trainings or other means in which you are to be kept current with any changes in employee policy manual as it relates to.
Do you recall receiving any specific training related to sexual harassment that was conducted by Disney or a contractor that provided that training?
Over 30 years of
Yes, sir.
employment, yes, there had been several different means in which the employee policy is communicated.
Do you recall when the last time you went through training related to sexual harassment?
No, I don't.
Do you know whether or not the policy, Disney's policy on sexual harassment, deals with unwanted touching?
Yes, it does.
And what do you recall specifically it says about unwanted touching?
Unwanted touching in the context of sexual harassment,
Yes, sir.
is prohibited.
And if an employee says that, strike that. If employees attend award banquets or functions that are put on by Disney during non-working hours, does the sexual harassment policy still apply in those settings?
In my opinion, they would.
Okay. So if
And I'll caveat that in that as executives, we are hosts.
Yes, sir.
As hosts, we are working. Cast who may be attending may generally feel they're not working as they're a guest at a company function. But I've always viewed it personally that when I'm representing the division and I'm hosting, that I'm working to the extent that I move about the tables and congratulate people that are at the function, as opposed to just attending as if I were a guest.
makes sense to me, sir. So if a manager was to say, to testify under oath, that when Disney cast members attend these functions, award banquets or other after-hour functions, that they are consenting to be touched, would that be accurate?
Objective form, you can answer.
Let me just tell you what was specifically said,
Sure.
and then you can tell me whether this is true or not. During Miss Melissa Smirklinger's testimony, sitting right there in that chair that you're sitting in, she said that if an employee is attending a awards banquet or some other social function, by virtue of them being there, they're consenting to be touched. Is that an accurate statement of your understanding of the policy?
Objective form, you can answer.
I would describe the policy to you in this way, that a mere touching could be construed to be sexual harassment, and it may be a component of a sexual harassment. And the purpose of employee relations is to evaluate anyone who may feel as though a touching as I shook your hand when I entered the room was inappropriate.
Right.
So a touching, in my view, is not sexual harassment. It could be certainly construed or felt that someone was made uncomfortable by something, which is why employee relations exist, to review those types of circumstances.
I'm sorry for interrupting you. I didn't mean to do that. But if someone was attempting to kiss a co-employee without their permission, would that be construed, in your understanding of the policy, as harassment?
Objective form, you can answer.
Restate your question.
If an employee, one Disney employee, attempted to kiss another Disney employee without invitation or permission, would that potentially be a violation of the sexual harassment policy,
Objective form, you can answer.
as you understand it?
I mean, the term you're using, attempt,
Right. Yeah.
construed, I mean, anything is possible. That someone could view something that was not intended as such to be something by the person being affected by it differently, which is, again, why employee relations is charged with reviewing these types of circumstances in totality.
One moment. So does Disney have a policy that also governs or regulates romantic relationships between cast members?
Yes.
And what is that policy?
The policy in substance indicates that if two persons, want me to wait?
Go ahead. No, I'm listening. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. If two persons become involved in a relationship, and they are in a direct report relationship where one of those persons is the leader or person responsible for the other, the policy dictates that human resources must be notified of that relationship, and generally one of those persons, if the relationship is being disclosed by one of the parties, the company takes the position that they should not be in a subordinate relationship with one another, and one of the persons is reassigned so that the subordinate direct reporting relationship no longer exists.
Okay, and you delineated that quite clearly. Is that a written policy?
It's my understanding that that's the substance of the policy you asked about.
But my additional question now is, what is that understanding based upon?
The policy.
What policy? Is it a policy number? If I were to be looking for that policy, if I was to send a request to your attorneys to produce that policy, what is the name of the policy?
objective form, you can answer.
I've read it in the company policy manual. I don't know the site.
Is it an
As
employee
to-
handbook that we're talking about, sir? Was it in the employee handbook?
It's an employee policy that's published online to all employees.
So it's online. Is that what you're telling me? That is it like currently online if an employee wanted?
Yes.
And how would is that through the HR site, or is it just a place online for all the policies and procedures for Disney?
It's online in the employee service portal for anyone to view it.
Sir, do you know someone by the name of Lori Harlow?
Yes.
How do you know her?
She's a friend of mine that previously worked with. She used to work for the company.
Did she work directly for you at some point
Yes.
as your secretary?
At different times throughout my career and hers, yes.
When was the last time she worked for you as your secretary, sir?
Up until the time that she retired about 5 years ago.
And did you consider her to be a friend?
Yes.
Did you have a romantic relationship with Lori Harlow?
I'm going to instruct him not to answer for the reasons stated previously.
Sir, do you know someone by the name of Helena Mobley?
Yes.
Did she ever come into your office and observe you in an embrace with Miss Lori Harlow?
Same instruction.
It's a yes or no.
I
You're directed-
instructed him not to answer the question. I'd also note deposition is not in Ms. Mobley's lawsuit.
You can answer the question unless she tells you not
I
to answer.
instructed him not to answer.
Same question, sir. Different question, rather. Did you ever disclose to the Disney HR, employee relations, or any entity that you had a romantic relationship with Lori Harlow?
I instruct him not to answer for the reasons previously stated.
Okay. One moment. And did you ever go on a cruise or a vacation with Lori Harlow?
Same instruction not to answer.
So you said Lori Harlow worked for you for 5 years prior to her retirement?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, I'm sorry. You said there was a 5-year period. You said something about 5 years. So,
No, I didn't.
oh, I thought you did. How long did Lori Harlow work for you? The last time that she worked for you?
The last time that she worked for me
As-
was approximately 5 years ago.
Okay.
At the time in which she retired.
All right, so that's where the 5 years came from. And what period of time did she work for you? That one last time that she actually worked for you?
I don't know specifically.
Was it more than 1 year?
She worked for 24 years. Do you want me to wait?
No. So you can answer the question.
She worked for the company for 24 years, as Melissa has, and there have been many times throughout both of our careers that we have worked together.
And I'm more asking about the times when she had a direct reporting relationship with you. The last time that you worked together, she was your subordinate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And does that mean that you did her evaluations?
Yes.
Did you recommend her for bonuses?
No.
Did she ever get any bonuses?
No.
Was she entitled to receive bonuses?
No.
Okay, so she didn't get bonuses because she was not in a position to get bonuses. Is that correct? Was she
That's
salaried or was she hourly?
She was salaried.
Okay. And did she retire just through the regular process after having so many years there?
Object to form.
You understand the question, sir? I can rephrase it if not. It's no problem.
You can ask it again.
Yes, I'll try. Yeah. Did she retire for medical reasons, to your knowledge?
I'm going to object to the form and without a confidentiality agreement instruct him not to answer.
Was she facing any discipline? Do you know the answer to that question?
Same instruction. Relevance and without a confidentiality agreement, I'm instructing him not to answer.
Okay. Who became your assistant after Miss Harlow retired?
Miss Ann Wadkar?
Was she your assistant up to the point that you retired?
That's correct.
How do you spell her last name?
Wadkar.
Okay. Okay. During the time that you served as the director of security, do you recall whether or not there were any complaints filed by employees related to sexual harassment?
I'm sure that there were, but sexual harassment is within the parameters of employee relations and human resources to investigate. So
Right.
I may have been aware that there had been investigations that were going on, but I did not conduct those investigations.
Well, help me to understand process. Isn't it the case that employee relations and or HR investigate, but then they make recommendations to the leaders?
Correct.
So then, if a claim of sexual harassment or any violation for that matter is founded or sustained, whatever language, then it's up to the leader to decide which discipline, what type of discipline to apply. Is that correct?
Objective form, you can answer.
Not as you've stated it.
Okay.
I can explain it if you'd like.
I would love for you to explain
Okay.
it, sir.
The investigative body is employee relations or human resources.
Okay.
They are mandated by the company to investigate sexual harassment specifically. There is an investigation, and then the findings of those investigations are discussed with the location leader that's responsible and has been designated as the partnering leader for that investigation, along with legal with regard to the appropriate action to be taken.
Okay. And do you recall ever, in all of that process, administering any form of discipline to security employees related to sexual harassment claims?
I'm sure that there would have been several times that discipline has been decided within the process that I described. That discipline would have been in the 30 years that I've been in security.
To your knowledge, if a person is found to be in violation of the company's sexual harassment policy, what are some of the consequences or penalties that he or she may face?
You just want me to...
Yeah, that you are aware of. Yes, sir.
It varies based on the circumstances and the facts of the case, but it can vary through several levels of discipline or separation based on the specifics of the case.
Are you aware of any employee that was separated from the company for sexual harassment?
I'm sure there has been some, sir, but off the top of my head, I couldn't name them for you.
One moment. Have you heard the term toxic file before?
I had heard that term.
You aware that Melissa Merklinger testified that she's actually seen the toxic file before?
Let me be clear. You're referencing
Yeah,
a term, toxic file.
Correct.
I'm familiar with a book that was written on toxic employees and became familiar with that term being used by Human Resources.
Okay. When did you become familiar with that term being used by Human Resources?
Within the investigation that I referenced earlier, whereas Jim Bowden and Peter McLeod were asking Melissa questions,
Okay.
they referenced a file or a toxic reference
Okay.
to a file.
And they asked Melissa Merklinger about the toxic file?
Yes.
And did she indicate that, in fact, she had seen the toxic file?
Objective form, you can answer.
Again, you're characterizing it as a toxic file. I'm suggesting, sir, the term toxic was used as a reference to a content that was being used by HR. So actually within that meeting, when that question was asked of Melissa by Jim Bowden, I interjected at that time, I'm aware of what I think you're referencing, and I have a copy of that PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint was authored by HR, and that I could provide him with a copy.
You told him that you could provide him with a copy.
Yes, and I subsequently provided him with a copy.
How did you become aware of it?
I'm sorry?
How did you become aware of the toxic content? You used the word content.
Yes.
All right. So let's talk about the PowerPoint. So you've seen the PowerPoint presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
A version. I'm not sure. I'm testifying that there was a PowerPoint sent to me that was in my email
From whom?
from Yvonne Sweeney.
Who's that?
She's an HR vice president.
When was that sent to you, sir?
Many years ago. I don't know the exact date,
Okay.
but I was testifying that that file was known to me as I had seen it in a PowerPoint. The term toxic was used in a PowerPoint. I made Jim Bowden aware of that and subsequently provided him the copy that was in my email that referenced that term.
Okay. So why did Yvonne Sweeney send you this PowerPoint?
Objective form, you can answer.
My understanding, the PowerPoint presentation was gathering data. Do you want me to wait?
No. Whenever I'm looking down, you can. I have the ability to split. So just answer the question unless I ask
this
you
is
not to.
a little interrupting, but
Sir, you can answer the question.
okay. The file that was sent to me was being soon put together by Yvonne in an effort to gather information about the security organization, and it had many dimensions and facets and data points within the PowerPoint that was an effort to try to understand all of the different concerns that may be something that we would work on as security from a strategy perspective. As example, the CAST survey results, that the CAST all take, and they have issues that they've identified in themes. Thematically, those things were pointed out within this PowerPoint as to concerns with scheduling or not having days off or other things. So it was a compilation document, PowerPoint, of several components that may be things that we could identify and develop a strategy around as to how we wanted to improve the culture within security and thus improve performance of the cast.
Who requested that this document be created, sir?
I don't know.
Did you request it?
No, I didn't.
Do you know whether or not your manager requested it?
I don't know who requested. I testified that Yvonne Sweeney was gathering the information, and she was asking for some of the data points to be populated by security. And specifically, I think Tanya Naylor was asked, as she was managing the grievance and union relationship in labor, to populate some of the data points that were in the file with regard to some of the things that she would have knowledge of as to the scheduling practices, the processes, the grievances that had been filed, some of the concerns that CAST were raising that would be indicators of things that we perhaps should look at as leadership to improve the organization.
So where does the term toxic come in?
It's the first, when I saw the document, it was the first time that I had seen that term that was used. So I researched it and looked into it to see what it specifically meant, just as in an effort to understand how the term was being used and what, within the HR world, how they view that.
But my question is, the term toxic was used in the document. Was it used in reference? Isn't it true that it was used in reference to certain individuals?
I wouldn't say that.
You say you wouldn't say that. Are you absolutely certain that the document didn't refer to certain individuals as toxic employees?
Not my recollection of how the term was being referenced.
Okay, so tell me what your recollection of how the term was being referenced is.
My interpretation is that when there are concerns that go unanswered and CAST raise issues within focus groups and within their CAST survey, and there's themes that continue to come through, that those types of issues can become toxic in the workplace to the extent that it impacts performance and culture within the organization.
Isn't it true, though, sir, that document, that PowerPoint presentation, listed specific individuals? It had their photographs and where they worked and the complaints that they made against Disney?
I'm going to object to the form, and I'm going to also instruct not to answer per the court's order. We will disclose such information if you agree to the entry of a protective order as directed by Judge Thorpe.
I'm not going to respond to that other than to say I would ask counsel to not make speaking objections, because you continue to do that.
And we will refer to it, if I make the objection again, as the protective order objection per court order.
There was no protective order. You didn't file one, and there isn't one that is against.
And the judge ruled that the confidential information was entitled to protection, and therefore, as I've said in court filings, if you agree to a protective order, the information will be disclosed.
Okay.
I'm putting that
Can we
on
go
the
off?
record.
Can we go off record just for a moment? You make sure you get everything on the record.
I want to put on the record that per the order from the court and the motions that were filed regarding confidentiality and business information as recognized by the judge in open court, and as we stated in court filings, if a protective order is agreed to and entered regarding provides for confidentiality, we'll produce the information.
Okay, now, just we need to go off record for a moment. Can we go off camera?
We are going off the video record. The time is now 11:59 a.m. We are back on the video record. The time is now 12:02 p.m.
Okay, so Did you make a recommendation to management in terms of who should replace you now that you're retiring?
No.
One moment. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Can you tell me again specifically what portions of this presentation did Tanya Naylor provide?
No.
How do you know that she made a contribution?
Because the request sent to me from Yvonne was requesting information within the scope of what Tanya Naylor did in her role. So
Did Tanya Naylor work under your supervision?
no.
Was she an indirect report of yours? Do you recall who her specific leader was?
Melissa Merklinger.
Do you know whether or not Melissa Merklinger had any input in the document, the PowerPoint presentation?
My understanding is she did not. The context in which I received it, it was a request from Yvonne. So I sent it to Tanya Naylor to populate the areas that she would have the information, like from the grievances and other things that she had within her scope. And I copied Melissa, as Melissa was her leader, so that Melissa would have had a copy, and with the request of what I asked Tanya to go direct with Yvonne if she needed to be able to provide the information that she was requesting.
Was a copy of this PowerPoint presentation provided to your leader?
No, not to my knowledge, not by me.
Who was your leader at the time?
Would have been Jeff Volley.
And was it the normal practice of HR to create PowerPoint presentations about concerns with, strike that. Had there ever been a request similar to this before regarding assembling a PowerPoint presentation on the part of HR? Have there ever been, to your knowledge?
Yes.
When was that before?
As HR is a global organization, the way that they're structured, they also have a HR business partner that is assigned to security. So that HR business partner becomes part of security, and as it does currently, resides in the building, attends staff meetings, attends other meetings, and is specifically assigned as the HR business partner to assist the organization with leadership development, organizational development, liaison and needs for assistance with any needs from the HR or employee relations broader organizations. So it's a kind of a liaison position, and it's often that they're facilitating requests from workforce planning, organizational development, other specialized areas within HR in an effort to best support the security organization.
Okay. Let's take a 5-minute break.
We are going off the record. The time is now 12:06 p.m. We are going back on the video record. The time is now 12:24 p.m.
Sir, just want to ask you some more questions about your job
Sure.
at Disney. Prior to this current lawsuit that Ms. Book filed against Disney, were you aware at any point of a previous lawsuit that she filed?
I believe there was, but I don't have specifics or immediate recollection of that.
And can you tell me just internally, if an employee files a complaint alleging discrimination, how internally do you become aware that a complaint has been filed?
Objective form, you can answer.
Discussions with legal.
So is it always coming from legal?
Yes.
I don't. Never from just employee relations first?
I'm going to object to form. May I ask one question for clarification that I think is a fair question, Jerry? Do you
No,
mean
no, you cannot. This
all
is
right,
my
object to
position.
form,
Okay.
ambiguous.
Okay. Are there any times that the first time that you're hearing about an alleged complaint of discrimination is when employee relations comes to you?
Object to form, ambiguity.
I become aware of lawsuits that are filed when legal sends me the official email indicating a lawsuit's been filed, and for me and others copied on the notification to retain all files as it would relate to that particular lawsuit.
But every internal complaint doesn't result in a lawsuit, right?
I thought your question was about lawsuits.
No, sir, and if it wasn't clear, I apologize. I'm talking about when an employee approaches employee relations or HR and says, I feel as though I'm being discriminated against. How are you made aware of such a complaint?
Object to form, you can answer.
Employee relations cases, whether they're referred through the HR business partner position that I referenced that is resident within our operation, or direct contact from a cast member with employee relations regarding a concern they have that's going to be investigated, the employee relations department calls the leader that is responsible for that person or notifies them that they're investigating a complaint and that they would be the representing leader for that case through their investigation. I personally wouldn't become aware through an employee relations call in that regard unless it was one of my direct reports.
Okay. Do you recall in the year 2010 whether or not Ms. Book had filed a complaint alleging that she'd been discriminated against in the security department?
Your question is complaint, not lawsuit?
Not lawsuit, just an internal complaint at that point.
I don't recall specifically.
Do you recall whether or not she had filed an EEOC complaint, which is not a lawsuit, but it's outside of the agency, outside of your...
I believe legal notifies me of those as well.
Oh, okay, all right. I don't want to know what they said, but was there some point that you were notified prior to this lawsuit regarding a previous lawsuit that an EEOC charge had been filed by Ms. Book?
Object to form, you can answer.
And let me narrow the question. In and around the year 2010, were you ever notified that Ms. Book had filed a EEOC charge against Walt Disney?
I'm generally notified of EEO charges filed by security through legal.
Do you recall also in and around 2010 there was an issue with Ms. Book being concerned about her former husband coming to her workplace and potentially committing acts of violence against her?
I recall a concern being raised that was investigated.
How were you made aware of that concern?
In that concern involved a workplace violence. That's within the scope and purview of security investigations.
All right.
To be the primary investigative body
Right.
that interacts with HR and legal. on their cases. And I was made aware that that concern had been raised and was being investigated.
And was it your understanding, well, first of all, who made you aware of that concern?
I don't recall specifically. I just, and you referencing it, I do recall.
And do you recall whether or not Ms. Book was requesting that she not be required to work in a specific location for safety reasons, for her personal safety reasons?
Yes, I believe that was the context of the concern.
Was that concern brought to you because you had the ability to decide where she could work or where she would not work?
No.
Why was why was the information provided to you?
I testified.
Objective form, you can answer.
Right. I testified. I was aware of it.
Okay.
It's not in my scope to manage those cases.
Okay.
Nor is it in my scope to assign persons to particular areas or move persons outside of a collective bargaining agreement bid situation.
So whose area of responsibility was it at that time to move and assign employees to a particular area?
You have to be more specific because it's two parts.
Ms. Book stated that she has some concerns about a spouse, a former spouse, potentially committing a workplace violence act against her. She was specifically concerned about working in a location where that individual would have access to her. Who had the authority to assign her to one location or another at that time?
I'm going to have to break it down for you.
Sure.
Workplace violence matters are investigated by workplace trained investigators.
Got that.
Make a recommendation to legal and HR.
Okay.
With regard to moving someone outside of a bid contractual location, there would be interaction with employee relations with regard to an exception to the contract, as if a grievance were filed. They needed to be consulted with regard to someone being assigned outside of the contractual bid.
And that's clear. I appreciate that. In this case, do you know whether or not, number one, did she make a request? Do you recall whether or not a request was made on her part to be assigned outside of her contractually bid area?
I wouldn't have been involved in that.
So you had not played any role in that at all?
No.
Do you know whether or not she was assigned to work in downtown Disney after she specifically requested not to be placed in that location?
No, I don't.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Do you know someone named Lily Sorensen?
I know the name to have worked within security in a role that was subsequently Tanya's role. She worked in the labor management administrative area of security many years ago.
Did she ever work as a direct report to you?
No.
Did you have regular interaction with her when she was assigned in the role that Tanya Naylor held?
There would have been routine and reoccurring business interactions with regard to her scope of responsibilities when she was working on something that needed to be at my attention level.
I asked you at the beginning of this deposition whether or not you had ever been the subject of any employees' complaints of discrimination or harassment. Do you recall that question?
Yes.
Is it true that Lily Sorensen filed a complaint of harassment and or discrimination against you?
Against me?
Yes, sir.
Not aware of that.
Do you recall ever having a conversation with Christy Sutherland from HR regarding a complaint that Lily Sorensen made against you?
No, I don't recall.
Okay. Who is, do you know a person by the name of Lyle Koenig?
Again, a manager, worked in security probably more than 10 years ago.
Does he
My
work there now?
recollection. No, he doesn't.
Did he retire?
He left to do something else.
Was he under investigation when he left? Did you know?
I'm going to object and instruct him not to answer questions about other employees and discipline related to them without a confidentiality agreement. With a confidentiality agreement, if there's relevance, we would answer.
Was he a retired brigadier general? Do you know that?
Sorry, what was that?
A retired brigadier general. I apologize.
He was former military. I don't know exact. I don't recall his exact credentials.
Did you hire him?
If you're asking, was I the hiring manager that made the decision? I don't recall.
Yes, sir. That's exactly what I'm asking. Just going to ask you a series of names of individuals, and you can tell me if you know these individuals or have they ever worked for you. Dave
To be
Dennis,
clear, when you say work for me, you're asking
mean-
if they were in a direct report relationship to me?
direct report or indirect report. Anyone that was in down
So-
your line of supervision.
So it's a yes or no as to whether they worked in the security organization.
Just I'll ask you the question.
Okay.
Then you can. Do you know Dave Dennis?
Yes.
How do you know Dave Dennis?
He worked in security.
And what was his title?
I don't know what level manager he was, but
And
he
did-
was a manager within security.
Did you ever interact with him in social settings outside of work?
Not that I recall.
Did you know someone by the name of Radina Stone?
Again, the name sounds familiar. Someone worked in security many years ago. Don't recall her title.
Did you ever interact with Radina Stone outside of the work setting socially?
No.
Do you know someone by the name of Mike Hager?
Again, not clear of the title. Worked in security organization many years ago.
Did you ever
More than probably 10 years ago is my reference point.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you ever interact with Mike Hager in a social setting outside of work?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Do you know Wendy Westmoreland?
Yes. Know the name. Worked in security organization many years ago.
What was Wendy's title as best you recall?
I believe her scope at the time was she managed scheduling.
Did you recall interacting with her socially outside of the work setting?
No.
Do you know a person by the name of Jesse Stanley?
Yes.
What was his title as best you recall?
I believe he was a senior manager, again, more than 10, maybe 15 years ago, worked in security.
Did you ever socialize with Jesse Stanley outside of the work setting?
No.
Tina Miller. Do you know someone by the name of Tina Miller?
Security manager, worked in security organization many years ago.
She's still working for Disney?
I don't know.
Okay. Did you ever socialize with Tina Miller outside of the work environment?
No.
Do you know someone named Beverly Williams?
Name doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. A moment, sir. Let me go through these questions. We may be approaching the end. Okay. Yeah. I want to go back to the meeting that you had with Jim Bowden, Peter McLeod, and Jim's boss. Was that meeting about the toxic file or the toxic document, or was it about Ms. Book's allegations of sexual harassment?
You're talking about the meeting that I testified to
Yes.
with regard to the initial investigation of
The
Melissa,
I'm sorry, I need to clarify. The closeout meeting.
the closeout meeting
Yeah.
with Gina.
Yes.
Okay, re-ask the question now. I know which meeting you're talking about. Go ahead.
Yes, and I'll ask two questions. Did the issue of the toxic file come up in the closeout meeting?
No.
Did the issue of the toxic file come up in the initial meeting that you had with Peter and Jim Bowden?
As I previously testified to, the term file is not a reference.
Document.
There was a reference to toxicity in a document that Melissa was asked about when she was interviewed initially by Peter and Jim Bowden that I was present at.
Okay.
That Melissa was asked about that a toxic reference.
Mm-hmm.
I preferred at that meeting that I know what you're talking about. I have a copy of that. And in fact, I sent it to Jim Bowden and Armando after I left that meeting so that they would be aware of the document that had been asked about within that interview.
So this came up in the first meeting.
Within the interview that I sat in on,
Yes.
that was Jim Bowden and Peter asking Melissa about the complaint.
Okay, that's clear. Okay, we just need another quick moment to go off record.
We are going off the video record. The time is now 12:42 p.m. We are back on the record. The time is now 1:43 p.m.
Okay, sir. Are you familiar with the term chain of command?
It's paramilitary chain of command, yes.
And I want to talk now specifically about the Disney Security Department. Was there a chain of command as such within that department?
There is a clear organizational structure.
Okay.
The culture is more of a matrix. The culture at Disney is collaborative. Okay. So it's not as structured in a hierarchical chain of command as would be perhaps military for sure or police department. It's there's a structure. Everyone knows who their leader is, but it's not. Can't talk to this person unless you talk to that person. It's understood that it's more open environment.
Okay. When you use the term leader, is that a term that is used interchangeably for supervisor?
I use the term leader as anyone who is salaried and responsible for direct reports.
Are supervisors salaried?
Yes.
Okay. So I understand that it's not as rigid as the military. That said, I want to kind of just go through the structure such as it was during the time, because you're now retired, is that correct?
As it was yesterday?
I guess if you retired yesterday.
I think it changed, but...
Well, yes, it changed because you're not there. But in terms of positions, really. So when a person comes into the security department, what's the lowest level that a person is working at, position-wise?
I mean, there's hourly and salary, that division.
On the hourly side, what's the lowest position in the security department?
Everyone that's not salary that's in the collective bargaining agreement
Yes,
is
sir.
titled security hostess.
All right, so that's we're not talking about an exact chain of command, but within the structure, that's the bottom of the structure. Is that correct? The security hostess.
That would be the
Or host-
non-salaried Some are costume, some are non-costume. Those are the casts that are not salaried or leaders. There are some salaried that don't have direct reports, but if you're a leader, you have people working for you generally that are non-salaried at that lowest level.
And what positions at the hourly level are not costumed?
There are, within the collective bargaining agreement,
Yes, sir.
the hourly casts that are covered that are not costume are plainclothes operatives, as an example.
Okay.
Investigators that are hourly are non-costumed. And
Is
there
it-
would be some others.
Is it considered a? Are you familiar with the term blues? If someone's in blues.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Blues can refer to the costume because the costume is blue.
Okay. So is it considered a promotion to go from blues to PCO?
Objective form, you can answer.
At the time that, during the time, the 30 years that you worked there, was that regarded to be a promotion going from blues to PCO?
Objective form, you can answer.
Within the collective bargaining agreement, it's a classification. So it's a classification change. Different classifications have contractually bargained rates of pay associated with them. And some classifications have higher rates of pay. Some of those are still in blues, but they have higher rates of pay. So it's a classification change, I would characterize it, which can be perceived as a promotion because it's an increase in pay.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. Was it an increase in pay from going from blue to PCO?
It would be, yes. Within the bargaining structure, yes.
And same question, but that relates to going from blues to investigator. Is that considered also a promotion, or did it involve an increase in pay?
There are premiums paid for investigator, canine handler, communication center specialist, plainclothes operatives. So those are negotiated with the union, and the rates of pay and the pay band, if you will, is negotiated within the contract.
When you say premiums, can you define that, sir?
It's a different rate of pay.
Okay. More pay, I'm assuming. When the word premium suggests to me, and I don't know, more pay. Is that right?
Each classification has a negotiated rate associated with it. So you can move from classification to classification. In most cases, it would be an increase in pay that is associated with that classification.
Okay. So let's talk about going up. So you could be a PCO investigator or a blue and not be a leader, correct? Or a manager. Those positions don't necessarily mean that you are a manager, PCO and or an investigator.
Now, those are within the collective bargaining agreement, and those are non-salaried, non-leader positions.
Okay. So let's go up to the next level where it becomes salary. At what level within the structure does a person become salaried?
The first level of salaried within the organization is security manager.
Security manager. And is there a difference in terms of how security managers are paid? Strike that. Do you recall what the average starting salary was for a security manager at the time that you last worked for Disney?
I don't recall the exact annual pay.
You don't?
No.
Do you recall whether or not salaried employees are treated differently than hourly employees in terms of eligibility for bonuses?
Objective form, you can answer.
I think you're asking, are there levels of salary that are bonus and other levels of salary that are not bonused?
No. And I asked a poor question. Between the salary versus hourly, are they treated differently for purposes of being eligible for a bonus.
Objective form, you can answer.
So let me see if I can try it one more time.
Okay.
And I'll just break it down to 2 questions. That's the best way to
All
do
right.
it. Do hourly employees receive bonuses?
They can.
And what determines whether or not an hourly person is eligible or not eligible for a bonus?
If they're within the collective bargaining agreement, the contract dictates when bonuses would be paid.
And to your knowledge, is bonuses paid with respect to or tied to performance for hourly
Not
employees?
necessarily, no.
You say not necessarily. Well, tell me when it would be tied to performance. If you know.
Objective form, go ahead.
For hourly cast members, incentives are not tied to performance.
What are they tied to?
They could be tied to a signing bonus for contract ratification.
Okay. Now let's go to salaried employees.
Mm-hmm.
Are incentives tied to performance?
For salaried cast,
Yes.
there are performance-based merit increases. Unlike the contractual bargaining unit, everyone gets the negotiated increase as an increase in their pay
Yes.
based on the schedule that's negotiated.
Yes, sir.
For salaried cast, there is a merit increase that is applied based on performance within the salaried ranks.
Is there a difference in how salaried employees are treated in retirement compared to how hourly employees are treated?
Can you be more specific?
Yeah. In retirement, are salaried individuals entitled to a percentage of their last annual income of some sort?
Can be.
Can be. If a hourly person retires, would they also be entitled to a percentage of their annual income or annual salary?
Objective form, you can answer.
The retirement program is negotiated with the union.
Okay.
So depends how long someone's been there. Familiar with defined benefit?
Yes, I do.
Some casts have a defined benefit based on tenure.
Okay.
Some are in the 401. So it varies, again, negotiated with the union as to what the pension would be for a collective bargaining member.
Generally speaking, do salaried employees rather receive a better pension benefit than hourly employees?
Objective form, you can answer.
It would be dependent, again, based on tenure and level that they left, how old they are when they leave. All of those things are within the retirement program.
Okay, thank you, sir. Let's keep going up the chain of command here. We have security managers. That's the first level of salary. And what's the next level
Right.
above that, sir?
But to back up just for clarification, I think you used the term better. in
I
your
did
last
use the
question.
term better, yes.
It
As it relates to benefits.
It may not necessarily be better in a situation where a salaried person has not worked 10 years with the company. They may not be eligible for pension. If you worked 2 years as a hourly, you would be, as it would relate perhaps to the collective bargaining agreement. So there's 2 different sets of rules applied. One's negotiated with the collective bargaining unit, and the other is dictated by company policy as it relates to salaried employees.
Are you talking about vesting? That
Can be a vesting, yes.
a salaried employee has to work 10 years before he or she is invested?
Generally.
Okay. And is it
I
your
understand.
understanding that hourly employees do not have to work the same amount of time before they are vested?
Object to form, you can answer.
It's not an apple and apple. They're both dictated by one by policy and one by the collective bargaining agreement as to what those policies are as it relates to salary and hourly non.
You're making that clear, sir.
Okay.
You really are. So let's continue to go
Okay.
up. What's the next position up from the security manager?
A promotional opportunity for a security manager would be senior manager of security.
And I need to back up and talk about the span of control and supervision for the security manager. What is the span of control, generally speaking?
It varies
Okay.
by function and by location, but generally spans of control for a security manager managing hourly blues cast. There's a guide that we try to have a 1 to 20 direct report count, but that certainly can vary because of geographic constraints.
How many employees were in the security department when you retired, sir?
Roughly about 1,800 people total within the security department.
How many managers? Senior or...
Roughly
Yeah.
about 125 to 130 salaried security cast.
How many direct reports did you have, sir,
I had
when you
four.
retired?
I had 4.
Who were they?
2 directors,
What were their names?
Melissa McClinger, Val Rodriguez,
Okay.
the Michael Pozlowski,
Spell the last name, please.
I believe it's Paulusky,
Okay.
and Ann Wadkar.
Is Ann Wadker, you're actually your secretary or executive assistant?
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of individuals who managed or led other individuals, there were only 3, is that correct? That directly reported to you?
Ann Wadkar had administrative responsibilities for the non-salaried admins that worked in the office. So
Does she do evaluations?
office and technical casts don't have evaluations per se. They're she would direct some work, oversee some, double check their input of time, those types of things.
Okay. So is it accurate that these 125 salaried leaders that 125 to 130 salaried leaders, they either worked for Melissa or Al or Michael? Is that correct?
Would be correct.
Okay. Now, just for the record, I think I know some of the answers, but what is Melissa Merklinger's race?
She's white,
What is Al Cardena's race?
Hispanic,
What is Michael's, whatever his last name is, race?
white.
Okay. Does Disney have a policy that governs diversity in the workforce?
I'm going to object to form, you can answer.
I don't know what you mean by govern. It's a inclusive environment at Disney.
All right,
that,
that's-
diversity is valued.
does Disney place a high value on having a diverse workforce?
Disney values diversity.
Does Disney also value having a diverse leadership force?
Yeah.
Objective form, you can go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to talk more specifically about some of the other leaders that you are aware of this 125. Obviously, I know you can't name all the names, but specifically, do you recall, or not? Let's not say specifically. Generally, percentage-wise, what was the makeup of the leadership team within the security department in terms of race? What percentage was white? What percentage was black? What percentage was Hispanic?
Objective form, you can answer.
I don't know.
Do you know whether or not Disney tracked such numbers in terms of the races and the national origins of the leaders?
Objective form, you can answer.
They may. I'm not personally aware of that, nor do I.
Were you ever asked to report such information to HR or to employee relations?
No.
All right, thank you, sir. 1 second. Okay. Right. Were you ever made aware at any point in the past that Ms. Book applied for a manager's position within security?
Again, if the answer to the question causes you to disclose communications with counsel, then I'd instruct you not to answer. Otherwise, you can answer.
Re-ask the question, please. Understand?
Yeah. So first of all, let me just respond to the objection. I'm never asking you to disclose. That's a standard instruction from me to you to disclose anything about any discussions with this lawyer or any other lawyer related to Disney. I'm talking about the internal process of people applying for jobs, promotions, and within the internal processing of applications in promotional opportunities, were you ever made aware that Ms. Book applied for a management position within Disney Security?
I would not have been aware of the application. I may have been made aware subsequent, which may have been attorney-client privilege.
Okay. Are you ever personally involved in the selection process of managers or leaders?
Objective form, you can answer.
The security, we talked the layers that you've detailed.
Right.
Security managers, not involved. Senior managers of security, I have visibility to the director's selections.
What do you mean when you say visibility?
They provide me the copies of the resumes of who they have selected.
And why do they provide you? Let's back up. Do they provide you the resumes prior to the final selection being made, or do they provide it to you after they've made their selection?
They've made their selection prior to offer. I just ask to see the resumes so that I can review the resumes.
And the purpose for your reviewing the resume to determine whether or not you agree with the selection?
It's unless there is a concern that I would see, I would not and have not said don't select this person.
You've never.
I
I'm sorry.
just like having the visibility to who they're looking at, where they're coming from, what their experiences are, to ensure that we're selecting, especially at the senior manager level, a diverse set of skills and experiences that can bring the team to, so we're not hiring everyone from Orange County Sheriff's Office. That we're getting a blend of skills and talents that will enhance the organization.
That makes perfect sense to me, sir. Now, as you've explained it to me, has there ever been a time where you said, no, we need to go in another direction?
No.
So if you're not involved in the direct selection of managers, and I'm talking about this second level that in the structure that we discussed earlier, who, position-wise, typically makes the decision about selecting managers?
There's a process that I'm
I like
not
that.
as
I like that
familiar
word.
to be able to quote it for you, but
To the best of your understanding.
there is a selection process that involves working with casting and professional recruitment to get a slate of eligible, which is determined by casting professional as to who meets the criteria. That list then goes to managers to interview and select and recommend to the senior managers, and it goes up to the director level.
Okay.
I don't see the security manager resumes as an example.
So does the director typically hire managers, or does the senior manager hire managers?
The senior managers, like the example we talked with the directors making the selection and just letting me have visibility to who they're recommending to be made offers to.
Right.
The directors similarly look at the senior managers' selections that they have made.
Got it. All right. So is there a are you familiar with the term TA?
Yes.
TA, what does that stand for, sir?
TA had been used at Disney for a temporary assignment.
Okay. When you say had been, does that mean that it's no longer used?
Correct.
And when did that TA process come to an end?
I'm not clear when it ended.
All right. And what is the process that replaced the TA process?
Instead of being someone just left, let's temporarily put this person in the role until we
Yes,
go
sir.
through the posting. Now it just goes to posting. So it's not filled with a temporary. It goes through the posting process and a permanent selection is made.
All right. And when you say the posting process, does that mean HR becomes involved at that point? HR?
Professional staffing for salary positions and HR become involved, yes.
And do they put out what is called a notice of a posting of an available job?
Yes.
And how is it determined who can apply for a position, a management position?
Anyone can apply.
Whether
There at times the postings are open internally only, and then there are other times that they're open internally and external to the company.
Are there any time and I know this is a military term, but I believe you can follow me on this. Are there any time and grade requirements before you can apply for a promotional opportunity as a manager?
Objective form, you can answer.
There's criteria that makes somebody eligible that I can't detail for you what they are, but casting, professional staffing manage that. So the posting goes out with the requirements, people apply, and if they don't meet the minimum requirements, the resumes are not forwarded to security for review.
All right. Do you recall Ms. Book, back when there was a TA process, do you recall her ever serving as a TA?
I believe she did, but I don't recall specifically the time frame or the position.
Do you recall whether or not, after she'd served as a TA for a certain period of time, whether or not she was offered a permanent management position?
I don't know the details of
Thank you, sir.
the status.
One second. Okay, one moment. All right, sir. So we need to go up the chain further. We stopped at the senior manager level. What's the next level up from there?
Senior managers report to directors in most cases.
Do you recall within the security structure, at the time that you worked there, up to yesterday, how many senior managers there were?
I believe status senior security managers number 13.
You just used the term status. Can you define that?
Status means they were in the role when I left yesterday.
So are there, and I don't know, I don't work in Disney structure. Are there unstatus in senior managers?
No.
Okay. Because the reason why I ask that, in the past, my understanding of TA, when you went from TA, you went to status, which meant permanent. So I was trying to find out whether you're using it in that same term.
Understood.
All right. So all of the 13 that you just mentioned are permanent.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And do you recall what the demographic breakdown of that 13? How many whites, how many blacks, how many Hispanics persons?
Not off the top of my head, no.
So above the director, what's the next position, sir?
Directors would have reported to me as the vice president.
And the vice president, what's your full title one more time, please?
Walt Disney Parks and Resorts.
And then, of course, there's only one of you, or was there more than one vice president
Yes.
that was assigned to manage security?
Yes.
Okay. There was another vice president that was also had security responsibilities?
Yes.
Who was that?
As I've indicated, I'm statist to Walt Disney Parks and Resorts.
Yes, sir.
My direct reports are status to Walt Disney World.
Can you tell me the difference?
Walt Disney
As an
World is
outsider.
Orlando. Walt
Okay.
Disney Parks and Resorts is worldwide.
Okay. Got it.
I report to corporate security in Burbank. And
Is that where Jeff
No.
Valet is? Was?
no,
Okay, so. All right, so help me with that, because I thought we talked earlier that for a while he was your immediate leader. Did I misunderstand that?
there was a time that I reported to Facilities Operations Services, FOS. And Jeff Volley is the Senior Vice President of FOS, Walt Disney Parks and Resorts, worldwide.
But but now you report you're retired, but before you retired, you were reporting directly to corporate. In
To
Burbank.
Eric Velez, who works from Burbank. He travels. He's here much of the time, but he's for the last year and a half. I've just had responsibilities at Walt Disney World.
All right, and then of course above Eric Velez is who's that?
Ron Iden.
Ron, and would you spell his last name?
IDEN.
And what is Ron Iden's title?
Senior Vice President of Security, Chief Security Officer for the Disney Company.
And above Ron, who's the next person?
He reports to Jane Parker, as I last checked.
What's Jane's title?
She's the Chief Human Resource Officer for the company in Burbank. Don't hold me to the title. I think that's what she does.
It's a lot of levels. And above Jane, who's the next person?
I don't know the reporting structure for Jane.
Okay. Well, okay.
There's a chairman for Parks and Resorts, but I don't know what the reporting relationship is after it gets past Ron.
Do you know a person named Margaret Giacalone?
Jackaloni.
Giacalone? Okay. Do you know that name?
Yes.
How do you know that name?
Colleague, when I worked for Disney, she's the chief legal counsel for Walt Disney World.
She worked with Mr. Armando Rodriguez?
Yes,
She Miss Rodriguez's boss?
I believe so.
Okay. And is she also a personal friend of yours?
I know her through work.
But do you socialize
I
with
would consider her a friend.
Do you socialize with her outside of the work setting?
In what way?
Go to dinner, go have drinks together? That way?
We have gone to lunch before as colleagues.
Okay. Sir, let me just take one last quick break. I think we're about done. So let's take a quick break.
We are going off the video record. The time is now 2:18 p.m. We are back on the video record. The time is now 2:26 p.m.
Okay. We have no more.
Okay, I just have two follow-up questions.
Sure.
Mr. Villella, you were asked some questions regarding the reason that you were unable to attend your deposition when it was previously scheduled. Could you explain the circumstances that occurred on that date?
Yes, I had an extreme pain with a medical issue that precluded me from going to work. That I called you and said, you know,
Don't tell me what you told me.
Okay.
You called me.
but I was unable to come in or drive to attend the deposition, and then there were multiple days subsequent to that until I could get into my doctor for him to give me some temporary relief and schedule the surgery that was subsequent to that.
Thank you. And you were also asked some questions regarding going on trips with Ms. Merklinger and I believe others at Disney. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Did you travel on business trips from time to time with Ms. Merklinger or others at Disney?
Yes.
No further questions.
No, you just raised a couple more for me. After the first deposition that you couldn't make because of the problem that you had, did you ever go back to work prior to surgery?
Between prior to the deposition up until the time that I was able to go in to see my surgeon for him to give me some injections, I did not go to work.
Oh, no, I don't,
After I got some temporary relief from the injections he gave me and scheduled the surgery, I went in and worked perhaps 2 hours a day until it became unbearable again, and I would go back home until...
I'm sorry.
Good.
When was the first day you went back to work and worked those 2-hour days after the injections?
I would have to refer to a calendar that I no longer have on my phone because it was purged to get the exact dates that or refer to company records as the time was entered into the company records with regard to sick days and days of work.
Okay, that's good. Now, the last follow-up question, just want to make sure I'm clear. My question was not whether you'd ever traveled on business with Melissa Merklinger. My question was, have you ever traveled not on business? Have you ever gone on a cruise with Melissa Merklinger and a couple of other people? Just not business related, just personal time off. Have you ever traveled with Melissa Merklinger?
Not on personal vacation, no.
Okay. And you have traveled with her on business?
Yes, I've had responsibilities worldwide. And at times we've both been assigned different locations around the world and conferences that we've attended.
Did you flown together to the location? You ever flown with her to a particular location?
Probably, perhaps.
And have you want to close that? You ever gone on a cruise with her as a result of, or as part of your responsibilities?
We both were on the same cruise for business during an event where executives were on the ship.
What cruise was that?
The Disney ship, but I don't remember. I've been on
Do you
the
recall?
ship several times for work, but I don't remember which time she was also there.
Do you recall what year that was?
No.
Do you recall what event was going on that required you to be on the cruise?
Not at this time. No.
Okay, no further questions.
I don't have any follow-up, and we will read and sign.
Okay.
Okay.
We are
All
going
right, very
off the
good.
video portion of the record. The time is now 2:31 p.m.